My name's Connie Gross, and I'm an infant and early childhood mental health consultant for the Children's Resource Center in Bowling Green, Ohio. And today, I just wanted to bring you a quick strategy video about how we can help children cope with disappointment. Disappointment is a feeling that we all experience from time to time, and it's really the result of things not going the way we'd hoped they would go, or maybe the way they've gone in the past. And that can sometimes lead to us feeling unsafe when things are different than the way we'd expected them to be. Sometimes this lack of skill and being able to cope with disappointment might even lead to anger and sometimes aggression in young children. And so today we're going to look at some strategies to help our children. First, we're going to look at some strategies to help them cope in the moment when they feel disappointed. But we will look at some strategies as well that help to build skills so that they're better able to cope in the future when disappointments happen. So, the first thing you can do in the moment is acknowledge that feeling of disappointment, labeling it for your child. So, you might say something like, I see that you're disappointed that your friend can't come over to play because he's sick. This lets your child know that you see they're having a difficult feeling and that you're there for them and there to help. Then, depending on how things are going in that moment, you might decide to either do step two, or you may be able to skip down to step three in some situations. If your child is very upset, maybe crying or maybe yelling, very upset and needing to calm first, and that might happen frequently for young children. As they build skill, you might see that they need to do less of this calming and are able to shift into problem solving. But depending on each individual situation and child, you'll have to determine which is best. I will say that a child won't be able to problem solve if they're not calm. And so if your child is upset, it's okay for them to need to do some calming things first before they're able to problem solve. So the calming piece of that might look like you seem pretty upset. Let's take some deep breaths together. Or maybe you're prompting them with a hug or asking them if they'd like to go on a walk, doing something so that they can calm their body down, and then we can move into what could we do about the problem. That's the third step, problem solving, asking them what could we do with that feeling of disappointment. In the example given, we might prompt with something like, would you like to make a card for that sick friend? Asking them what they could do to kind of move on from that feeling and into something that they can enjoy. There's lots of ways that we might prompt their moving on. It won't always be making something for the other person or the situation. Sometimes it might just be shifting into another play activity or getting them engaged in some activity with you, like helping with dinner. That's how we can help a child cope in the moment. But we also want to think about how can we build those skills for the future. So here are some tips for that. We want to try to label disappointment when we see it in others too. So in the moment, we're labeling it in our child, but just on a daily, regular basis in our home, we want to label disappointment as it comes up. Just really as we should do with other feelings too, that we want our children to be really confident in how to handle when they come. Labeling disappointment could be on TV, within our home, maybe at the park or grocery store. Whenever we see a situation that we feel like might be a good example. And this really helps our child to see that everyone experiences disappointment. And the example on the screen there, it says your sister is disappointed because there are no more cookies. So letting our children know that they're not the only one that gets disappointed. Others in our household do, and others at school and friends. Everyone has to handle disappointment from time to time. Then the second thing we can do is model good coping skills when we, as the parents or caregivers, feel disappointed. Now, there might be some times where we feel disappointed and we don't exactly handle it the way we'd like our child to. And that happens, but we won't point those out. This modeling means that we're showing our child a living example of how we'd like to see them be able to handle problems in the future. So, when we think about modeling coping skills for disappointment, it might look something like me saying, "Oh, I am so disappointed my package didn't come again. I'm going to take some deep breaths to calm down." And then taking some deep breaths so my child can see that in action, tying that word disappointment to the coping skill. The second example there is about self talk, which I kind of also did in the first example. Self talk is kind of that internal script that plays in our heads when situations arise. But for our children, in order for that to be modeled, they really need to hear it. And so they need us to verbalize that self talk out loud. So, me saying something like, "Oh, I'm disappointed. I need to calm myself down. I'm going to take some deep breaths," is self talk. And then we might also model other behaviors or examples of things they could do to calm down so that they can move on to the next thing they need to get done. So we might model counting when we're upset, counting to 10, taking deep breaths, calling and checking in with a friend, anything that we would really like our child to be able to use as an example of what they could do when they feel disappointed. And then the third thing we can do here for building skills for the future is we might role play some situations that could potentially lead to disappointment. So, for example, opening gifts. If you're about to have a big birthday party for your child, you might talk with them about prior to the party, about how sometimes they may get a gift that's different than what they were hoping for. So, you might give the example of, let's pretend like I'm giving you a gift and you open it and it sucks. That's probably a bit different than you were hoping for. But how would you react if that happened? What could you say to the person? So maybe coaching them and telling them, "Oh, thank you for the new socks," or "I needed some of these," something like that. You might also be able to help them think about other situations where disappointment could happen. Like before you go to a play date, you might talk about what could they do if someone was playing with a toy they really wanted to turn on. Or if at school, maybe they didn't get the job they were hoping for, like line leader. Everyone wants to be line leader, and you're going to get a turn to be line leader, but it can't always be your turn. Let's pretend like we're at school right now getting our jobs, and you got the job table washer today. How could you handle that disappointment? If you were feeling upset, what things could you do at school? So you can role play that and talk through some of those examples, and that will help your child as those situations arise. They'll be better mentally prepared to handle when situations don't go as they were hoping, and better able to cope with them as it's not a brand new idea. There are a lot of great resources about helping our kids cope with disappointment. There's a really cool tip sheet on challengingbehavior.org specific to this topic. There's also a lot of great articles, but I really liked the one from childmind.org and used that for some of today's presentation. And then you can find tons of strategies for challenging behavior at consciousdiscipline.com. That is where you can find a lot of information on labeling feelings and helping them cope with lots of different feelings, but specifically disappointment included. We also have a YouTube channel at the Children's Resource Center, and we have over 150 videos all about social emotional wellness topics for young children, birth through age 8. Check us out. There'll probably be something there you might find interesting. And then we have a Facebook page where we share resources for caregivers every single day. So, hope you can check us out there. You can use those QR codes if you'd like. And I hope you'll tune back in for future strategies and chats. Thanks for watching.